Hi, it's Richard Harrison. Welcome to Tech Talks, this monthly episode with one of our experienced CIO leaders. Delighted to have Louise Bunting with us today. He's a very experienced CIO, worked in various industry sectors, and especially within financial services, and has a real passion and experience around sustainability, which is one of those hot topics at the moment. So thanks for coming, Louise, and joining us today. And perhaps just for those that don't know you, perhaps you could just give us a whistle-top overview of your experience, your career to date.
Yeah, sure. Hi everyone. Hi, Richard, formerly. My name's Louise Bunting. I have had a sort of I've done lots of different things in my career, predominantly starting from network build and from the telco sector. I joined Cable and Wireless. I was very young, and they sent me all over the world negotiating submarine cable systems contracts. And I actually started off by connecting all the little internets across the world and building effectively the first World Wide Web connectivity for Cable and Wireless, right in the early days, in sort of the late 80s, early 90s. That I had children, and then I started again, and I started again in consulting. I was very fortunate, and it was consulting at a time when virtualization was just starting, and modernizing infrastructure became a key theme from a strategic perspective. So that allowed me to have a very broad consulting experience at PTS Consulting. Then I went to KPMG, and I became a CIO for Yonder. And Yonder is where I was very inspired, actually, because I was given health and safety, sustainability, and tech within my role. I can't say I knew much about anything other than tech at that point. And I learned it, and sustainability became a big passion. And when I left Yonder, I set up carbon net neutral tech solutions to really build on what we'd done at Yonder in terms of automating metrics and processes, allowing us really to use carbon data effectively. So carbon net neutral was born from that. And now I am loving every minute of it.
Fantastic. So I've got a few questions around that, obviously, as well. But I guess if you think back to the CIO role, so we start with that, the broader responsibility of what that entails. What would you say your biggest challenge was in your last CIO role?
So I had really grown up, if you like, in a complex technology landscape. Yonder was a startup. So probably any of the CIOs out there thinking, oh, that's amazing. You've got full SaaS provision. It's really easy, cloud adoption. But ironically, the biggest challenge was building enterprise grade systems on SaaS products. And the weaknesses that you get in terms of functionality from SaaS provisions versus on-premise and what you're used to. We had additional complexities in our client base because they were the major cloud providers, so we had to have lots of different options to support them. For example, you couldn't deal with Microsoft if you were using Google Meets and things like that. So we had lots of workplace collaboration options, which was adding complexity. We automated pretty much as everything we could because we were growing at scale. We went to 21 countries in a year, and scaling SaaS and automation was complex. We had to build a lot of overlay systems. But I think actually interpreting what the business wanted was tricky. So we ended up doing that ourselves and building and showing them what we could do. But the automation was great fun. The SaaS provision and making up for weaknesses within the SaaS products areas was probably the most complex.
Got it. Okay. So where did the sustainability angle come in? So tell us about it. Obviously, it's a clearly passionate area for you. I think there's probably a lot of people you know, I think we're well aware of some of the the climate change challenges and the various targets that the UK government's trying to adhere to. But what's the kind of the journey you've been on around that, and where does that sort of passion come from, and what value have you seen it adding to in the organisations you've worked for?
So, huge value, obviously, but I think my passion was derived from not really understanding what ESG meant. I mean, ESG were a set of metrics that we were producing pretty meaningless, really. They weren't. We just sort of almost treated them like end of year accounts. And the data I was getting back from third parties on our carbon counts, I didn't really believe. They couldn't substantiate anything. And carbon, to count carbon properly, the carbon's under E, which is the environmental part of ESG. ESG is actually metrics reporting is wider, but I started off really trying to get my head around carbon counts, because I took a look at our offset charges off the back of some consultant derived carbon accounts, and they were in the millions. And so we were exploring offset costs, and the more you went into all these different areas, my utter disbelief really was kind of apparent. I mean, offsetting is the Wild West, so you can pay anything, you know, from millions and millions to sort of 10 pence if you want to buy some hokey cokey scheme in an odd place. So I learned a lot about offsets. I learned a lot about carbon, and to mitigate costs, really, we started looking at carbon reduction, and then it became apparent that you need carbon data at the point of making a decision, not after the event. We were doing our carbon accounts at the end of a build cycle. Pointless, you can't change anything. So we needed that data up front, and then that became challenging because you need to be able to ingest a lot of information to get really detailed component level carbon data. So we started automating data designs and things like that, and the ingestion of that data into a system that we could basically automate carbon accounting from. And there was nothing out there, so we had to build it. And we got quite clever at being able to automate carbon counts and then identify the top 5 and then hand them off to somebody else to work with, and then doing some sort of quite clever prediction of cost. And then we presented it to a couple of clients. They loved it, and they were like, oh my God, this is incredible. And then we started looking at run carbon and how we could get data off on run carbon. And there's a difference between embodied and run. And that's to do with the emissions reporting, along with how you actually look at the carbon data itself. So, and we also had some of our builds were financed. So Yonder was a data center operator and builder, and big, huge constructive hyperscale construction on hyperscale locations. So you can imagine a building project has lots and lots of different components. So it's quite complex from a carbon perspective, but you've also got a run element. So you've got the build and then the run, and run is scope 1 and 2 reporting, which is electrical usage. So we were looking at how do we model our designs really to reduce electrical usage, and then how do we ensure that we're reducing our carbon count during the build. Each had different factors. So we started modeling, started being clever. We got involved in sustainable finance, which effectively paid for all the run carbon cost reductions. We started being super clever at coming up with alternatives. And then the run carbon reductions were all based around giving people information on electrical usage so they could move workloads around. We were doing stuff around carbon density, looking at location-based carbon, because that can be different depending on where you host things. So if you host something in Scotland, it's going to potentially be lower carbon than London. And we were being sophisticated. Since I've left Yonder, I've moved more probably into operational estate. So how you do workload placement, how you influence change and behaviour. So, for example, if you give somebody a carbon count for a workload placement, they're more likely to place it and in the right place if you give them a carbon detail rather than cost. And we were looking at how do we actually change and reduce cost using carbon as an influencer, and obviously you have two benefits then, and it sort of pays for itself. So yeah, lots of different things we've been doing now, carbon net neutral, from green ops to how do you start doing carbon life cycle management and circularity principles, and that reduces your carbon even further. Lots of different aspects to carbon. And the more you get into it, the more interesting it becomes. And I basically learned my trade really from doing it. And also I did a Cambridge University course, and my team were like incredible. It's such a vast area, you need experts. But it's definitely, I don't know, since I've been doing it properly and going into clients, there's not many people actually implemented proper carbon management policies. It's all really strategy at the moment. How do we do this?
So if you're a technology leader, you might be forgiven for thinking, oh, that might sit in, I don't know, let's say it's the COO's world, or maybe I haven't seen the job title Chief Sustainability Officer yet, but I'm sure at some point someone will have that. So if you're a technology leader, what are the things you think that they can be doing to kind of, I guess, add value to the business, whilst also, doing positive good for the business? Because you could, obviously from the person ultimately running and responsible for technology, what would you say the things they should be thinking about, and how they could add value and contribute to that ESG agenda at the board level?
Well, there's clearly one aspect which is around the reporting. So there's definitely a requirement to report scale and trend that reporting. Large scale companies next year are going to have to start reporting under EU rules. The UK has just announced their own set of rules. There's also influencing your own team and how they operate is key. So IT is responsible for quite a high percentage of overall carbon across the world. I think it's something like 30%, could be wrong. I'm really bad at remembering stats. So mitigating carbon within your own environment, within the IT estate, there are various things that can be done there around what you buy, and making sure you can buy products that can be recycled or have used recycled materials. There's adopting proper circularity principles at the end of the life cycle. There's extending asset life cycle. There is also a lot to do around green ops and looking at code, and how the problem with code is that it often costs more. It's lost a lot of money to rewrite the code, and the benefit you get from efficient code and the run carbon efficiencies. But there's definitely elements around green ops which can be adopted fairly easily, and they will ultimately reduce cost. So there are so it's looking at sustainability practices within technology, and also helping the broader organisation to collect their data so they can make decisions. One of the key things that I have learned is that if data is not available at the right point of making a decision, people make the wrong decision. And carbon presents a different lens than just cost. So, for example, if you're buying something from a unit cost perspective, the run cost could be 6 times higher than the next product, which has got a slightly higher unit cost, but the run cost is actually lower. So there's equipment efficiency as well to be taken into account, and looking at it from that perspective. So metrics, make that data available at the point of making a decision for all departments, and looking within IT to make that more efficient.
Fantastic. And for those, I'm sure that are interested more. I'm sure people are more than welcome to reach out on LinkedIn and drop you a connection.
Oh yeah, please do.
And chat and
I'm on a mission. Yeah.
And obviously, Louise, for those that know, Louise is joining as one of our panelists for our flagship Technology Leadership Conference on the 12th of October. So you'll be able to hear more around that. I think we could talk about this all day in this shorter interview format. And then, do you think, changing tack a little bit, what's your personal favourite technology invention of all time?
Well, I obviously say the internet because I was involved in making it the mobile web. Yeah, definitely the internet. I mean, or IP protocol, because that changed everything. Modern tech, I know, it's an extension of what had already been created, which maybe you could say it's best investments, but best inventions. But I do believe the World Wide Web changed the world.
And do you think, the next couple of years, top priorities, obviously there's been a number of, there's always different challenges, right? Different economic cycles that people go through, inflation or all the usual things that are going on at the moment. But what do you think if you were sort of, obviously you're focusing obviously a lot on your sustainability consultancy at the moment and some of that innovation around that. But if you were sort of back in that number one role, what would do you think would be the most important things you'd be prioritizing, and things to add the most value back to the business or to the customers?
Yeah, I mean, there's still a lot of complexity with legacy infrastructure, and I think it's got to be a priority to try and have a more standardized landscape, and infra modernization has got to be key. It's probably a little bit boring now compared to sort of digitization, but actually removing legacy creates just removes a lot of complexity from the site. So we did a big strategy for a huge client actually, and our strategy was really about simplifying the environment and making everything software defined. So software-defined networks, data centers, pretty much everything was the strategy. So, but you can't do that with a legacy landscape. So, moving off legacy, giving yourself the ability to become software-defined, I think probably the key things I would try and do.
Fantastic. So I've got just some fun questions to ask you just to finish up. Just 10 quick questions. Favorite book?
I'm really bad at reading books. I'm going to say Grazia. I get given thousands of management books, and I never read any of them, if I'm really honest.
I have to Google that one. What about Android or iOS?
iOS.
Star Trek or Star Wars?
Star Wars.
Do you have a favorite radio station you listen to?
Probably Heart, because I'm so old.
Yeah, Heart atheist now. Mindful place. What's your mindful place?
Probably in my garden.
About social media, but Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, or whatever they call themselves now.
Don't really like any of them. I find them a little bit, they waste my time, and I'd rather go for a walk. But if I had to pick one, I'd probably look at Facebook Reels.
Yeah, there's Be Real, does all sorts of the other ones apparently as well.
I do Be Real. I need to find out what my kids are up to.
Yeah. What about coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Mac or PC?
PC.
Book or ebook? Sounds like neither, but
yeah, I'm probably ebook. I am a member of a book club, but I literally never have time to read books and never really read them. And Grazia, by the way, is a magazine.
Maybe favourite wine then? Red or white? There we go.
Red, Santamillion, Premier Cru.
And I don't know if you've got a favourite sports team or favourite hobby or whatever, but
I mean, I've recently got seriously into Pilates, which isn't really a sport team, but I quite enjoy a good netball match, and I think the recent, well, Commonwealth Games are really recent now, but some of the top flight netball matches are awesome to watch. And I also love hockey. They're not really mainstream. I have been watching the women's football, and I don't mind a good World Cup, both in rugby or football. But yeah, other than that, I wouldn't go and sit in a cold stadium.
Brilliant. Louise, thanks so much for sharing some of your thoughts. And so for anyone interested, please reach out on LinkedIn or join us on the 12th, and you can go meet Louise in person. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye. Bye, everyone.